Welcome back along to the hookup. Here we are with our special resident guest of the next few episodes, Emma from the moment, and also from Emma in the moment. And are there any other channels or anything like that?
No.
Welcome to the hookup. My name is Crochet Zaddy, your host and fellow craft enthusiast, and this is your weekly dose of crafty conversations with your favorite crafty content creators. How are you?
I am doing well. How are you?
I'm doing fantastically. In this first episode, we are going to be talking about you and who you are and how you got here, etc., what brought you into the crafting world, all that kind of jazz. And then our next few episodes, we're going to be doing a bit more about your rise to fame as almost like the craft drama guru, exploring like the landscape of the crafting drama world, and then also how you engage with the community around this crafting drama. Let's just start off right away with how did it all start? Where did you start with crochet, knitting, fiber arts?
So my grandma actually taught me how to knit when I was about 10 years old. And yeah, she did like a cute little, oh, here's how to knit garter stitch kind of tutorial. And she was trying to teach my siblings too, and they were not super interested. But it didn't really stick back then. It was like I knit a little scarf and learned how to do kind of some decreases, but mostly just like stuck to rectangular and square things. And because my grandma was teaching me, she was like showing me these knitting patterns that I should follow. And it was like the kind that are super, super abbreviated with no photos. And I was like 11. And I was like, I can't read this. I can't figure this out. So it didn't really stick. And, I just put it away, and it's, had some needles in a box in my room somewhere, but really picked it back up again during the pandemic.
Classic.
I Yeah, as a lot of people did. But yeah, I was in music school and was supposed to graduate, or I did graduate in 2020, and did my senior year virtually with all of that stuff, and was planning on taking a year off before going to grad school. And in that time, I had planned to do all of these singing gigs, and I had like some performances lined up, and I was going to audition for choirs and things like that. But obviously, all of that got canceled because of the pandemic. So I ended up just basically taking a year, and I was working as a nanny and doing no performance, I had no sort of creative outlets. I was just going to this nannying job where the kids bullied me, and
God.
no, they were great, but they also did bully me sometimes.
Why are they
Um,
bullying you? Is that something I can ask?
I mean, I don't know, because there were kids that were like
It's
up inside
horrid.
in the pandemic.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't know why any kids do anything, but I don't know, they would call me like old and like make fun of me if I like it. I don't know. They were just
Were
kind
you
of like,
knitting in front of them?
was no, I didn't bring any of my crochet stuff to nannying. Like I took them outside, I took them on walks, we would like play outside all day, and then they would be like, we want to push you down the slide or whatever. So that was my 5 days a week. I would go nanny these kids and then come home, be exhausted. And one of my friends who I went to school with ran her own like crochet Etsy shop. She made little like she made a lot of like scrunchies and coin purses and things like that. And she was like, you know what, I think you would really like crocheting, and you should try and learn. So I just, she sent me a couple tutorials. She was like, I think try this one, I feel like you can figure it out. One of them was actually one of Kelsey's videos.
Really?
So funny. Yeah, I didn't realize for like a few years, I didn't like connect the dots, but it was one
Yeah.
of her like bralette YouTube
Yeah.
tutorials. And that was like my first real attempt at a project. And I made the bralette cup like so many times, and I just could not figure it out because I hadn't even learned how to make like a square of crochet yet. And I was trying to figure out how to do the increases in the top of the cup so it gets like bigger and bigger. And I just remember sitting there and being like, this looks terrible. I have to try it again. And just like unraveling it and trying it again. And yeah, I mean, I feel like everyone always says it's like, oh, I started doing it and then I was just kind of hooked. So
Oh my god, that's actually really funny. So
yeah,
you technically learnt a few things from Kelsey. I learned how to
yeah,
knit from you.
yeah.
I bestowed my teachings of amigurumi back.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. No, it's so fun to see like how everyone is so connected
Interconnected.
and just like teaching each other and learning. And I taught Jada how to knit too.
Oh, you did, didn't you?
Yeah. I like held her down and forced her to learn because she
Yeah,
was
I'm feeling like this is kind of like you know how there's like drag families?
yeah. Like everyone has their own special skills
Yeah.
and they're
Oh my
teaching
god.
everyone else.
That's
So
actually really
sweet.
cute. Good little
Yeah,
family
that's
tree of different crafts
really
and
wholesome.
where we learn from. That's so fun. And so wait, because you continued on doing your education and music and everything like
I
that. So
did.
you were doing performances and etc. prior to 2020, and then 2020 the entire performing arts world got really shunted.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, and I mean, especially, like, opera in LA, I feel like is
mhm.
it's a very niche group of
Yeah.
people anyway, and then, like, as soon as you, like, niche it down further and you're like, because there were a few productions that did actually go on.
Oh, yeah.
I went to this drive-through opera, which was really cute. It was a really cute
Lovely.
idea, actually. They had, like, the singers were on stage, and then they had mics up there that were feeding into a radio stream that you played in your car.
That's so interesting.
It was a really good idea, and, like, it's not quite the same as going to a regular opera, but I thought it was a really creative way to kind of get around it.
Yeah. I don't know, for some reason in my head, I was imagining you all sitting in a car park and it's like this like opera singer like sitting on top of a car, like driving around and just like, yeah, yeah. Kind of. Yeah.
That would've been pretty funny, actually.
And then you carried on to do postgraduate stuff because I remember your topic in postgraduate being super interesting.
Yeah, I can talk about that a little
Yeah, absolutely. I want to
if
hear
if
more.
this is the moment for it. I don't know
Yeah.
if anybody cares about my research in grad
I
school.
care, and that's
Uh,
what matters.
yeah, and you're in charge here, so that's all that
Yeah.
matters. But, yeah, so I did a master's in vocal pedagogy and
Mm.
opera, and how I explain it is it's basically vocal pedagogy is basically like voice science,
Yeah.
how to teach singing, and then my program is also very, like, research heavy,
Yeah.
which was cool because I hadn't done any sort of, scientific data-driven research
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
before, and yeah, I show up the first week of school. They're like, "Okay, we want a proposal for your project. What do you wanna do?"
I hate how they do that because I did postgrad as well, and they're just like
Yeah.
straight away, they're like, "What do you wanna do?" And you're like, "I don't know."
Like,
Like
I just got here. Give me a
yeah.
second. Basically, I knew that I wanted to do some sort of research on trans singers because
Yeah,
there's not a lot of research being done. And the research that is done is very limited, obviously, by
yeah,
like study size and just funding and all sorts of things. So I basically just like went through all the literature and was looking for something to talk about. And I originally my idea was to do a study on like the effects of testosterone on the singing voice.
oh,
And
yeah.
there have been a few studies
Yeah,
following that. Most of them are kind of shorter just because of time constraints and getting enough participants of like
yeah,
opera is niche and then getting this like marginalized population to come in and be volunteers for the study and all of that. So
yeah,
that was sort of a limitation where it's like, okay, how am I going to find participants for this study? As I was looking through the literature, there was basically just this huge hole in research on chest binding,
yeah,
um, which there really is almost there's very little research even in like the medical community on the effects of binding, especially long term and
yeah.
especially on breathing.
Can you give a quick explanation of what binding is for
Sure,
those who
yeah.
don't know?
So is this the way that I describe it is it's basically like a sports bra that's like what traditional like commercial binders look like, but they have like more structure on the front to compress like the breast tissue down, and they have like a little bit more stretch in the back. But because of that, it's kind of like tight on the whole like rib cage lung area, and your lungs sit like right here. um so when you're working on breathing for singing, it's any little tiny thing that you're doing with your posture, or how you're standing, or if you're wearing something, it can really affect like how efficient your breath is. And for opera singing, it's very important to have, balanced breathing and all of that stuff. And everyone has their different philosophies on breathing, and I won't get into it too much, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think everyone would agree that breathing is very important for singing.
Yes, yes, yes,
um,
yes.
and yeah, basically I just wanted to look at what effects there were, because you're thinking about it logically and you're like, if you're an opera singer who's wearing a binder, probably something is happening. And the point of the study was to look at what was happening so that we could hopefully provide some sort of just information for voice teachers and for singers who were binding to do it in the safest way possible, so that it
Uh,
wasn't like negatively affecting their long-term
yeah,
health, while also considering the fact that like the option is not to tell them to stop binding.
yeah,
And like that is a very important part. They are going to do it. Let's figure out a way to see what's happening with it and see where we go from there. And the not to get into it too much, but like the very, very overarching what we found was that like binding wearing the correct size does have some impact on singing. We looked at quite a few different measures, and
yeah.
won't get into it. Message me if you want, and I'll send you my
Yeah, yeah,
my
yeah.
paper or something.
Yeah.
But binding with the correct size didn't have as much of an impact as binding like incorrectly, basically like adding too much compression, and layering binders, which is the way that we adjusted compression. Um, so from the very, you know, bare bones study we did, that's kind of what we found.
Honestly, I find it very fascinating because I did my undergrad and my postgrad is all in linguistics and like sociolinguistics, so about like identities in language and things like that. So I imagine there would have been some kind of crossover. And we did like one particular study, and we did one which was on it's like in California, and it was a certain part of speech that changes, or like it's predominantly male identifying people and female identifying people would use this speech to identify more with that gender.
Oh.
So it's like the speech. Oh my god, I cannot remember the word, but like the instance in the speech pattern would have been like if you say either singing or you say singing, and it's like that
Oh.
G at the end was either pronounced more or less depending on what gender you identified more with. And so we got a bunch of videos of Caitlyn Jenner, like prior to transition and post transition and around the time of transition. And we counted the amount of times that we heard that G sound. And the graph was just straight up like this. It was just like like transitional change during
That's
transition.
so interesting.
Right? I thought it was so cool. And it was only like a small part of the like entire paper. This was just like one little slight thing we did. And I was like, oh.
That's so cool.
Right? Anyway, do you still use your degree to some capacity alongside your now career as a YouTuber, crafter YouTuber?
Yeah, yeah, I would say that I do. Like, at first when I graduated, I was like, oh my God, I'm not continuing in my field of study, and I'm like leaving academia and I'm not using my degree. But it's just not true. Like, I am using my degree. I learned a lot of writing skills. I learned a lot of like research skills, and I learned a lot of reading skills, which sounds, I knew how to read before, I promise.
Yeah, I
But,
feel like this is evident in all your videos.
yeah,
Like,
I mean, just like learning how to read these like really, really dense scientific paper. My mentor professor was specialized in like acoustics, singing acoustics basically, and would give us these like really, really dense readings. And he was just so excited about them. And I would read them and be like, I'm trying my best, but I'm not understanding that much. And it helped me a lot to like push through and get something out of them enough to discuss about. And yeah, I feel like it's really helped my ability to read through a lot of sources and figure out what information is relevant and put together something.
Yeah, because at first when you started Made in the Moment, what was like your intentions then, and then how's that changed over time?
Yeah, so when I started the Made in the Moment channel, my intentions were mostly to make like tutorial videos.
Ah,
And yeah, yeah.
wait, was it YouTube before Instagram or anything else?
Oh, yeah, so no.
Okay.
When I started Made in the Moment, the brand, I was making yeah, I was making clothes. Basically, once I started learning how to crochet, I was just making too much stuff, and I was like, "Oh, well, I want to keep making stuff, but I can't keep all of this." So I had my friends like send me their measurements, and I would make them little like little crop tops and stuff like that. And I kept doing that for a while, but then once I got to grad school, it was like I just can't be doing commissions like this anymore. And once I started wanting to be doing more like complicated projects, it's just like the time and the payment and the everything just like wasn't making sense. And so I started writing patterns, and that sort of took me through most of grad school. And while I was doing those patterns, I was like, well, I can probably learn how to edit a video of me explaining how to make something. And then that's sort of where the YouTube came in, where I really thought it was just going to be me making tutorials, and that was it. Because I was like, oh, I can't be a YouTuber. I'm not going to be on camera or
Yeah,
anything like that.
yeah.
And actually, when I started making TikToks first to promote my project basically. And at first I was like, I don't really want to show my face because I don't know, I'm a little self-conscious. I don't want someone to say something mean, and like what if someone thinks I'm ugly and then they tell me? Like I just can't handle that.
Yeah,
But then after a while I don't know, tried it out and nobody said anything, and I was like, okay, I'm probably okay.
yeah. I think
uh,
people engage a bit more if, like, the creator's face or, like, is just more visible. Like,
yeah. Yeah.
some accounts I see that are just faceless, I don't know how they've grown to be that big.
No, I feel like you have to have a really distinct style or something, or you're sharing something else that people really resonate with. But
Yeah.
I think I agree that like once I started sharing my face more and like talking more to the camera, then people were engaging more and really like, connecting. Yeah.
It's always very interesting. And so you carried on, so you're doing the tutorials, and then from there, what made you change to start doing more talking videos?
I don't really know. Like I think I'm trying to remember what the first like talking video I made was, but I think it was probably like a project recap kind of thing, which um came from me making TikToks about like, oh, these are all the projects I made this month. And then sort of the next logical step was like, well, I'll make a video and talk more about it, because in my 30, 60-second TikTok, I'm just showing the project for a few seconds and not really saying anything about it. But, and at that point I was a very prolific crocheter, I will say. Like I would end the month with like 10 projects or something. And now I'm like working on the same project for 4 months kind of thing. Um, so there was a lot to talk about. And yeah, I guess I've always watched a lot of YouTube, and it's something we've talked about too, of just like learning a lot from watching a lot. And after a certain point, I was like, well, I can try it out. Maybe like hopefully only like 100 people see this, and then I'll get some practice doing this, and then I can make my tutorials.
Mm. And so, because I feel like watching your journey, it started from, yes, you're doing like TikTok, Instagram, showing off short form videos and showing off your projects, everything like that, tutorials and whatnot. And then once you started kicking into YouTube, there was also a time where you stopped wanting to make so many projects as you just kind of mentioned. And then you're like, okay, now I'm going to flip it and start talking about the community in a way. And this isn't even getting into the draft, like the craft drama stuff. This is just saying, I want to talk about what's topical in the community and show off more, not I was gonna say interesting, but like more in-depth topics, and not
Yeah,
just focus on being like, here's another project, here's another
right.
project, here's another project.
Yeah, I guess like some of that started because of the Golden Fleece Crochet made that crochet hot takes video like
Yes.
years ago at this
Yeah,
point.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I saw that and I was like, that's a great idea. I'm going to come up with some hot takes and talk about it. And, you know, people love to argue about things.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so, and, you know, you've made some of those videos too, right? So, like, you know, kind of the response that they get of just
Yeah,
like,
people start
it's a,
fighting in the comments and you're like, "It's not that serious."
yeah, it's like, I don't know. I was just
It's
saying the first thing that like
it's
popped into my
just
head.
acrylic yarn. Just, like, leave it.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Everyone's very passionate about their takes. And that was I think that's what really got me like interested in plugging into the community in that way of just like understanding where people's heads were at and like what their opinions were and what the I don't know what the hot takes were and what the things that a lot of people agreed about were. And it's it's just really interesting to see kind of how that dynamic like plays out in the comments of these videos.
Do you ever jump in and, like, say, "Hey, stop fighting, everyone," or do you just kinda let it roll out and you're like, "Yeah,
I
you guys,
mean,
you'll sort it out?"
at a certain point, I feel like there's not really much I can do unless there's, you know, I haven't seen anything like egregious to the point where I'm like, I need to block people or delete people or get this.
I had people start having a full, fight about inclusion, and race on a video where we're both in the video. It was one of our, it was the one where we're in the Airbnb together and we're doing like walking around the table and doing the summoning for I can't remember
Oh
what my video
yeah,
was. But it
yeah.
went well. Yeah, people were fighting about race in the comments on that one. And I was like, I was like it
Did
was
and
yeah.
did you step in?
Yeah, I was like, "Shut up, both of you." Like, I had to put in this, like, clear answer, just being like, "Look, this is how things are," or, "I agree with these points, I agree with others, and if you continue, like, fighting on my page, like, get out."
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yeah.
No, and like really at the end of the day, like it's just we're just talking about yarn. Like
Yeah.
everyone
Like
really relax. Like I
like,
understand
I
there are like very real and valid concerns about diversity, equity, and inclusion
agree.
in the yarn space. And that's not to say, oh, it's yarn, we shouldn't talk about it. But like
Yeah.
there's a time and a place for it. And someone's like fun video talking about something maybe isn't the place to be having an argument with someone.
Yeah. I agree.
But that's the internet for you.
But was it from, like I mean, because now you've made the in the Moment channel. Was that it wasn't because of those comments, but was it what my understanding was is that you would have seen like Craft Snack or even like the Ravelry boards, or even you just heard of dramas yourself and you wanted to do a deep dive into those. Was those like the inspiration of that channel being created? Was that because of those boards, or was it also like because of other creators who do deep dives and you're like, I can do a crafty spin on this?
Yeah, I would say it's like a combination of all of those things, but probably most heavily, like I said, just like watching other YouTubers and being really inspired by like the videos that they do and yeah, just being, you know, talking about things that happened in the crafting world with friends outside of it and explaining all of the details to them and having them be just like hooked on every single word that I'm talking about. And it's like all these like random friends that I have are really interested on like the niche inner workings of these controversies that come up. And you know, it is just very interesting to me and seeing kind of taking that template of like a commentary YouTuber, a video essayist, and like a drama YouTuber, and putting crafting into that. Just like, I mean, when I made the first video, I didn't have any idea what was going to happen. I thought that it would just be a thing that I tried, and then I would see what the reaction was like, and decide if I wanted to keep making videos like that.
Your first drama video is actually on your Made in the Moment channel, isn't it?
It is, and it's very confusing to people because they're like, I tried to look for that video and it's not on your channel anymore. I'm like, well, it's on the other one, and I know it's confusing, but trust me, I'm confused
Are
too.
you
I have like 5 email addresses. I can't keep anything straight. Like,
are you gonna re-upload? Are you just gonna re-upload that to the other one, or
I don't know. I hadn't even thought about that. I feel like it would have been smart to do that right away, but now
Yeah,
I
but
feel like it's kind of too late. So
I feel
I
like you didn't know what the response was gonna be because it was
yeah.
huge. Like,
Yeah.
you skyrocketed into the crafting hall of fame. I don't know what to call it, but, like, I feel like everyone knows Emma in the Moment. Is I mean, in saying that, is actually Made in the Moment kind of been put on the back burner, and now Emma in the Moment's the whole new thing?
It seems that way. I mean, I think like that Emma in the Moment videos just take up so much time to put together. So that's like really been the focus, I guess, of the past, I mean, I don't know, few months definitely. Um and then yeah, trying to figure out how to balance everything else. But
I mean, in saying that, it feels like when I say the Made in the Moment brand, because that is all definitely like knitting, crochet related crafts, fiber arts, and very focused on that. And more like I say the traditional way, but I don't mean like actual tradition. I just mean it's an what you would expect from a crafting
yeah, yeah.
social media. um, is that now become more less of trying to sell patterns and even selling some items, and now that's become a hobby page again.
Yeah, I would say so. And it's in a way it's been really nice to kind of step back from that because there was a while where I was putting out just so many patterns because I was trying to come up with all of these ideas and fund my way through grad school basically. And that was the way that I was doing it was in between classes I was working on a project and then writing a pattern for it and doing the tester call and all of that stuff. And it got to a point where it's like I really like actually crocheting stuff and knitting stuff and the pattern. I'm not super passionate about pattern writing. Like I'll write a pattern if people can ask me a lot of times and I'll try my best and try and write one, but at this point it's been really nice to just kind of get to make things that I want to wear and have and not be as concerned about like okay, well I got to get this out by next month because I got to make sure I have a pattern drop so that I can like pay my rent and tuition and pay all my bills and all of that stuff. So,
No, I very much feel you on that.
yeah. Yeah.
Even starting this podcast, I'm like this is gonna be so much fun getting to talk about crafts and things, but then I have to remember I also make all my patterns and like there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
So it's
I mean,
fun
it's
though.
tough. It's hard to balance it all, and I feel like everybody that's doing it full time, and even people that are doing it like part time, everybody agrees that it's just like it's so hard to do what feels like enough and to make enough money. And I don't know. I feel like everybody's just feeling it everywhere, and everything's
Yep.
so expensive, and it's
Yeah.
yeah,
So support your creators, everyone. We we're working hard
we're
to
trying.
to entertain, to provide, to just garner support for ourselves. So make sure you're following, subscribing, and liking to all our
And go buy
videos.
some of Zach's patterns if you're while
Buy even
you're
buy
at
some of
it.
Emma's patterns.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah. And on that note, let's go to a break and we'll meet you all in the next episode. Nice.